much, guys. No, and this is it's amazing.
Hi, how are you? Nice to
Margarita,
see you.
nice to meet you. Yeah, of course.
Right. Are we good to?
Laura, are we good to go?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Matthew Bishop. I'm moderating what I think will be a very exciting and important panel. The last time I was here, this was Medical Psychedelic House 2 years ago, which was very much caught the zeitgeist of Davos that year. I hope this issue, the future of technology and how we can make sure it serves humanity rather than destroys humanity, should be the zeitgeist story that everyone at Davos leaves having thought new and important thoughts about. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to talk a bit about how this issue of the need to save social media technology and technology in general to make it serve humanity, why their personal story got them committed to this important mission. For myself, I wrote a book called Philanthrocapitalism that came out in 2008. And at that point, I was comparing the new wealth of this era with the new wealth of previous eras. And I said one of the things that I think I was probably I've never been more wrong about, which was that the capitalism of the early 2000s, particularly centered on Silicon Valley, was relatively benign compared to the capitalism of 100 years earlier in the States, and that it was less extractive. And I think extraction of data and its misuse has become one of the big themes. I got involved, there was a moment, I think, during the Arab Spring where I was even willing to see social media technology as a force of a progressive revolution around the world. And then I think my turning point was I helped found Giving Tuesday, where we gave people a way to talk positively on the web about causes they cared about. But I think, wake-up moment was when my 2-year-old son, in about 2015, there was a moment where I think probably a bit earlier than that, his first word, I think, was iPad. And his first meltdown was when I tried to take the iPad away. And it was like, this was the most serious meltdown I'd ever encountered. And I realized this was the addictive drug that I was going to be fighting against. And so it has proved to be the case. So I'm going to kick off, Tristan. Can you just talk about what's your story? Why are you so engaged in this fight? And what are you thinking about today?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be with all of these great panelists and friends. An honor to be with you. What can I say? I grew up believing that technology would be an amazing and positive force for the world. I grew up on the Macintosh. I thought when I was 11 years old, I wanted to work at Apple and be part of the next Macintosh team and the next positive wave of technology that would unleash human potential, creativity. Little did I know that my best friend and brother in life, later in my life, would be Asa Raskin, who I started our nonprofit, the Center for Humane Technology, together. His dad was Jeff Raskin, who started the Macintosh project at Apple. These things were totally disconnected. It's almost mystical that we ended up working together. The Macintosh for me represents an ethos. His dad actually wrote a book called The Humane Interface, with the idea that technology that is humane, he wrote in his book, is considerate of human needs and respectful of human frailties or human vulnerabilities. He was specifically thinking about, like in the same way that this chair, if it's ergonomic, it knows something about the anatomy, the truth about how the human body is physically formed. And if you design a chair well, it's ergonomic to a body. Jeff, Asa's dad, who invented the Macintosh, thought about the ergonomics of the human mind. The Macintosh was the first point-and-click interface, right? Drag and drop, the mouse, drag icons here and there. It made computing simple and accessible for everyone. And what it was about is making technology, the complexity of all this possibilities of technology, making it ergonomic to human minds and making it accessible. I think that the fundamental, one way to see a big issue with how social media has been destructive to society and what the possibilities for the better future are, is that we have a completely misaligned and unergonomic technology stack sitting on top of, or rather sitting underneath or entwined with, democracy, children's development, families, loneliness, belonging, connection. You can either design to be ergonomic to those features, or you can design to basically disrupt those features. And hopefully the Social Dilemma Netflix documentary, which I was a part of, made clear to the something like 200 million people in 190 countries and 30 languages that the business models are fundamentally misaligned and produce an entire future technology stack that is not aligned and needs to be aligned. So for me, when you ask, how did I get into this? I just think very obviously, as someone who cares about the future and how we impact society, when I woke up to this in 2013 or so when I was at Google, I just realized that I had to somehow be part of changing it. And I had no idea where that would take me, and I'm grateful with where we are now, and hopefully with some big changes that can be further coming.
Great. Jonathan Haidt.
But I got into this by two separate threads. One was tech effects on democracy. The other was tech effects on children's mental health. And I thought originally I thought they were disconnected. I didn't understand the role of tech in them. I'm a professor. I study moral psychology. I'm a professor at NYU, New York University, and I've been looking at polarization. My first book, The Righteous Mind, was about why we're so tribal, why we're so polarized, why it's getting worse. And back then I was optimistic that, well, maybe we can turn this around if we do these 7 things. But then in 2014, it felt like there was a glitch in the matrix. Something changed in 2014. It wasn't crazy in 2012, and it was crazy by 2016. A lot of weird stuff begins to happen in 2014, because that's when we're wired up on super viral social media platforms that any spark over here creates a forest fire over there instantly. So I guess, right, the technology is the Santa Ana winds of democracy. So I've been studying that for a long time, and I have an article in The Atlantic called Why the Past 10 Years of American Life Have Been Uniquely Stupid. That lays out my basic argument about what social media has done to democratic deliberation and group dynamics. And I got a contract to write a book on that. But then I also had this other line, which is all of a sudden, college students in 2015 were very different. They're very anxious, depressed, very upset by little things that 5 years ago no one would have caused a riot about. And I was trying to figure what happened. Why are they so different now? And with my friend Greg Lukianoff, we wrote a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. And it was about how we've been overprotecting our kids, and that's a big part of the story. In 2017, when we were writing the book, we didn't know that we didn't have evidence that social media was a big part of it. The evidence was contradictory, small effect sizes. So I just had 2 or 3 pages on it in that book. By 2019, I was gathering a lot more evidence, and it became clear. This is happening. It's linked to social media, especially for girls, and it's happening in many other countries. So the two really came together, and now what I'm looking at is the way that these technologies, they're not just like tools to help us do things. They're changing the basic operating system of human interaction, which is what the American democracy was based on. The founding fathers were very good psychologists, but all of their assumptions are now false. Many of them are now false. And so our societies are going to be increasingly unstable, and there could be the best democracy ever in 50 years, but for the next 10 or 20, I think we're not going to be figuring this out. But I decided to focus all my effort on the kids, because if we don't turn this around with Gen Z, there's no point in working on democracy.
Thank you. Tomicah, Tillemann.
Thanks very much. And first, huge gratitude to both Tristan and John for the foundational work they've done in illustrating the challenges in this space. I've been very fortunate to work at the intersection of technology, policy, and finance for a long time. And a few years ago, I was a venture capitalist. I was working for a big firm called Andreessen Horowitz. They are key investors in many of the big platforms that dominate the internet today, and have played a really pivotal role in the evolution of the internet. And what many of us, I think, recognized in the work that we were doing is the system as it was evolving had some really big problems. The internet is amazing. So let's stipulate to that at the outset, it is an extraordinary central nervous system for the planet and humanity, and has the potential to deliver incredible benefits if it is used correctly. But it is at the moment, operating according to a set of dynamics that aren't very helpful. They're not helpful for our kids, they're not helpful for our economy, they're not helpful for a number of other key components of how society functions. And when I looked back through my life and the long history of my family, I had to go back a long way for a precedent on this, but I finally found it. My 17th great-grandfather was a guy named Hugh Broster, who lived in a little town called Cheshire exactly 500 years ago today. And when he woke up precisely 500 years ago today, he went outside and found a feudal society. And all of his neighbors picked up farming implements. They went to work cultivating fields that they did not own or control. And they sent most of the produce that was generated by those efforts up to a manor house far away for the benefit of a handful of feudal lords who sat on top of that system. It was a pretty decent system if you were a feudal lord. It was a pretty substandard system for everyone else. And within Hugh's lifetime, that system changed. So it wasn't as though this was something that was fixed and permanent forever. Once people figured out ideas around the Enlightenment, ideas around the Renaissance, concepts of individual rights and individual ownership, we were actually able to build a much more productive system that served the needs of everyone far more effectively than the system that had come before. We are at a moment right now where every day, we take out the modern equivalent of farming implements with our phones. We go to work creating valuable product that we send off to manor houses in different parts of the world. And it is a system that works pretty well if you're sitting on top of that system. And I've been fortunate to spend some time sitting on top of that system. It's not a system that's working particularly well for everyone else. And so we have a moment now to change that system. We have a moment to move beyond the digital neo-feudalism that we're stuck in right now and toward a digital renaissance and a digital enlightenment where people are going to have more rights and more opportunity. That's the work of Project Liberty. That's the work that I'm very privileged to be a part of in conjunction with our efforts. And I think it is a change that needs to occur if we are going to realize the incredible potential of the technologies that we are bringing into the world right now.
Thank you. And Margarita, Louis-Dreyfus, what brought you into this?
Thank you very much for asking me. I looked at this from a little different perspective. I'm not a professional psychologist or economist or in technology. First, I was always interested about anthropology. How did we come? It was my, like a hobby. From this point of view, I looked also at my own children, and it was very interesting for me. But my three first boys were lucky enough born early, and they were not so impacted by social media or other stuff. But by technology already, yes. But okay, still I was kind of like an observer. I saw something is a little going wrong, but maybe not too bad. So the first thing which really struck me when I started to read more about new technology and the people in this technology saying to our children that the education can be so easy and will flow to your brain. It was already a long time ago. I was just writing something about it. So I came many times, but one of the time it was in Zurich. I came to AI forum. It was already AI forum 8 years ago. Already existed. And there were very smart people explaining to all of us what a beautiful paradise is waiting for us very soon. Just let us open our doors to all this digital technology and everything will be so nice. So listening to them, and one guy was very nice, very kind of friendly. I came behind the stage and asked him, I said to him, what you said is so interesting, but I'm alone here. Can I invite you for lunch with my three boys, that they will hear about the future from you? Because they would not believe me. So it's better to hear from And he was flattered, said yes. So we went to lunch. And then usually at that time, now I even don't need to ask. I ask the people from tech industry, our children, do they need to learn to read? The question was, of course, no. But I wanted my boys, at this 8 years ago, they were like 18 and 25. I wanted to hear them. And of course, the question was no. And why no? Because he said, we are human beings. We are reading only to get information. And the amount of information will be so huge that no one brain can handle it. But to learn to read, it's so painful for children. Many of them are struggling many years. So we have to free them from this. The childhood should be very nice, free from learning this. And
So what changed your mind about
and everybody, he said, will have a digital first. It was 8 years ago. Everything is going that direction. He said, first, everybody will have this digital device with the knowledge about yourself, everything. Then, of course, he said it will go to our dress and then finally to our brain. And as an example, and my boy says, yes, yes. They are very, oh, yeah, because this guy did already so much money with writing programs for artificial intelligence. So he's, of course, a hero. Then he said, as example, he said, for example, you have to choose, you are hungry, you want to have your breakfast. You have to choose a cheese from 200 cheeses. How long you are going to take with your normal brain? But your digital second brain knows you so well, quickly will take decision for you about the cheese and about everything in your life. You don't need to because it's so, everything is cost us so much energy, so they will help us in every decision. So I remember my question was also to him, what is the difference between AI and human being? He said the amount of mistakes. So it's clear who is doing more mistakes. So he says to my boys, because of course it was a conversation more for them, do you want to take a plane with a pilot who drank yesterday and maybe his brain is still kind of a little with alcohol, or with AI? Of course, clear. AI. Do you want to be operated by a doctor who had a conflict yesterday with his wife, as maybe his hands are trembling, or by AI? Clear AI. So we are going very nicely direction. So of course my question was, can we human being something better than AI? Of course with the time not. And then he said, because he drank nice red wine, he got a little relaxed. He said something what he didn't say on the stage. He said that finally we have to accept that there is a power as a natural selection. They are much stronger than us, and the time for us came to die as a humanity. And my boy is kicking me under the table. Let's kind of stop asking all these questions. But he was continuing. Yeah, we have to, we have to accept it. Then I asked him, should we kill each other? How should we die? He said, no, we are going to die peacefully. No children. This is clear. People will just stop to have children. He didn't explain to me why. And it's looked 8 years ago really strange. But today we have it. Today we have everything what he said. It's going this direction. So this was a very important lunch, I have to say, for me and for my boys. I didn't need to inspire them about anything, because they started to understand what is going on, what is the end of the story. And then one of my boys brought me your movie, Social Dilemma, which was, of course, another kick. Then I understood we have to do something. Here I was just in shock. I didn't know what to do with this. With this digital dilemma, I said, okay, we have now to be active. And the last thing what I will say, I was surprised how easy it is to destroy us, how easy it is to kill our instincts, like, for example, the motherhood. How many girls today, they will be never mothers. I would never believe it 10 years ago that this is possible. And so to explain it for myself, I came to conclusion that we are so done by the nature that we prefer easy solutions. And as an example, it's a sugar. We love so much sugar, and so many of us have diabetes as a result of it. And sugar is an easy and quick way to to energy. So we are looking for this easy and quick solution, and everything what we are doing is natural for us. And to take for us deliberately a difficult way cost us some energy and moral convictions. And this is why for tech industry, for this addiction, it is so easy. They are giving to our children easy and quick solutions. And they cannot say no, even we as adults. And always explanation is, but we are making your life easy. So this is good. This is like conversation with this guy. We just know what the end of this conversation. So this why I'm now with a human change.
Fantastic. I think we've got a great flavour of the passion that people are bringing to this moment, and it is obviously, you know, a moment where we have the feudal barons in Washington yesterday with their king that they bought, and the freedom really to do what they like, perhaps. And we have another vision, which is of one of the most popular apps in America being taken down for a few hours, and the American public, by and large, freaking out at the prospect to the younger people of not having that. And I'm going to ask each of our panelists, you know, I mean, it's very easy to think that the terrible trends that we've seen in the last few years get just turbocharged by deregulation plus AI, and what we've seen in the last few years is just a tea party compared to what has to come. But let's have some alternative visions and how you think we might get there. And I'll start again with you, Tristan.
These are all massive entry points. I think that there are two opportunities for leverage even with the next administration coming in and the direction moving towards deregulation of technology. To be clear, I don't think that the answer is just like regulating all technology, it's getting the incentives right. So maybe before I say what I'm about to say, in our work at Center for Humane Technology, we really focus on the incentives. Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's business partner, said, if you show me the incentives, I will show you the outcome. If the incentives for social media are, you know, how much have you paid for your Facebook account, your LinkedIn account, your Twitter account, or your TikTok account? 0, but it's worth trillions of dollars, and the business model is engagement. Engagement produces the race to the bottom of the brainstem, et cetera. So if we want to change the future, we need to change the incentives. Because if you don't change the incentives, you're not going to get there, and that's why we need some kind of laws or action to change those incentives. I think the reason that the work of everyone on this stage focusing on the issues for children is so important is that's the issue that everybody agrees on. And even no matter what you think of the people that are coming in to run the United States and the sort of tech plus, the tech alliance with those political forces, everyone has children, and I think has now really clearly understood that problem thanks to people like John and his book, The Anxious Generation. So I think there's going to be a big entry point there. We worked on, apologies for those who heard this earlier, we worked on this character.ai litigation. How many people here saw the example of the 14-year-old who committed suicide because of talking to the character.ai chatbot? So if you didn't know, that's what it was. It was a 14-year-old who was using an AI chatbot. For what it's worth, I think AI is about to supercharge every single one of the concerns that we've all been worried about. If you're worried about addiction before, wait till you see generative AI. You can take a picture and turn it into a video game. I don't know if you've seen this. You can literally take a screenshot and say, make me a video game of this, and it can make an immersive video game that a kid could be immersed in for hours. That's just one tiny example of thousands that you can do. And in character.ai's case, we're going to see, obviously, this incentive to hook users for engagement, not with feeds that keep people scrolling, but with relationships, companions that are the most intimate friendship you'll ever have, that's always available, that will talk to you when your other friends are tired and don't want to hear from anymore. We're about to see AI just supercharge these things. And so I think that AI converging with the threats that we've seen to children can make clear, and through things like the litigation that we helped file, through things like the Kids Online Safety Act, through things like John's book and the movement for phone-free schools and the Australia ban, that I think there's momentum to make something happen around kids. The second one that I think is a leverage point is national security. And that the current thing that I would argue, we talk about a lot of things, we talk about social media, we talk about AI, the reason why no one is doing anything to regulate either social media and AI I would argue, is one trump card, which is if we regulate it, we're just going to lose our tech companies, we're going to get weakened, and then we're going to lose to China. And that's particularly concerning in the US around AI. And I think to combat that, I want to just introduce one basic metaphor. The US beat China to social media. Did that make the US stronger or weaker? Beating weaker. A more addicted, distracted, polarized, can't do critical thinking, weakened family systems, don't want to reproduce. Like, the whole social fabric has just been weakened massively. While we have these bigger weapons, so it's sort of like we've buffed up our muscles and our steroids, but our immune system and our heart, we're getting like lung failure and heart failure. So it looks like we're big, but it's actually, there's this deep, weakened internal system. And I think that we need to change the currency to the degree we're in a race with China, speaking from a Western perspective. We're in a race for who can govern technology in a way that strengthens your society. In China, they actually have a different version of TikTok that some people call like the digital spinach version of TikTok. It often shows patriotism videos, videos about who won the Nobel Prize, financial advice, and people can only use it for like an hour a day. And obviously, that's not what the rest of the world gets. And so it's a competition for who can govern technology. And I think that's never been more true with AI, and we need to change the currency of that competition. I'll just say one last brief thing, which is a way to think about how we're creating our AI future is like the way we played the game Jenga. Remember the game Jenga, the board game? Not board game. We're getting all these new capabilities, like new cures to cancer. We can get 10 years of scientific progress in a year. We can get 5% GDP growth, just unbelievable benefits. But the way you got 5% GDP growth is you just automated 100 million jobs without anybody having a future and no one knowing what they're going to do next. So you just created this massive weakness in society. You created the amazing new AI art and Sora videos that leave us astounded with our jaws open, but you pulled out this block of now no one knows what's true or what's real. So we're getting the Jenga future, both the confusing, amazing benefits, while we're getting this incredibly weakened foundation. And it's a competition for not who has the shiniest blocks at the top, but for who has a lasting future tower of civilization. And that's the currency of the race we have to be in.
Great, John.
So if the question is about how do we imagine, what would it take to have a future in which the technology works? So I think we have to first recognize that we tend to look to the past for examples, and we say, oh, well, this is like tobacco, or, this is like, the moral panic over television or comic books. But this is not like anything else we've had before, because the network properties are different from anything that we've ever had before. And so I was interviewed by the economist Tyler Cowen, really interesting guy, and he was saying, like, but we're going to adapt to it. We adapt to everything. I was like, wait, like, look at these rates of mental illness. Look what's happening. And he said, oh, but we'll adapt to that. I said, well, how? And he said, like, well, our brains will adapt. Well, that would only be true if the kids who were really on it a lot had more children. Then eventually, maybe evolution in 1,000,000 years, 100,000 years. But what I tried to convey to him was, well, Tyler, the way that we adapt is by doing things like putting on a minimum age and putting in regulations to make it less dangerous, especially for children. So the key thing that I tried to bring to this, and I think the reason why the Anxious Generation was so successful, is that it didn't just say, look how horrible all of this is. It actually said, once you understand that it's all about collective action problems, we can get out if we do it collectively. And so the 4 norms that I propose in the book are no smartphone before high school or 14, no social media before 16, phone-free schools, and give kids far more independence and free play in the real world. So if we have what we have to do is we have to understand this is not something that individuals can do on their own. And the biggest argument in America, which has a more of a libertarian, side, is, well, it should be the parents' choice. Parents should be able to choose what to do. Really? We're all trying, and we can't do it because it's a collective action problem. And if we say no, and I've said this to my daughter doesn't have Snapchat. She says that she's the only one in her whole high school. She might well be. And I said, I'm sorry. I polled all my students. They mostly agreed. Yeah, don't give her Snapchat. So this is actually a very important point. You said TikTok you said Gen Z was freaking out about it. Were they really? Do you have the sense that were there big protests? For obviously the creators who were making money, but generally, do you guys have a sense that Gen Z was really freaking out about this? No. And here's why. Because they know that TikTok is so bad for them. TikTok has destroyed more human capital than any company in human history, I would say. Meta, it's hard to say, the two of them. Even my students who managed to get into NYU, so few of them have a 10-hour-a-day habit, but some of them have a 5 or 6-hour-a-day habit on TikTok. And that means they're basically taking themselves out of life. In the United States, half of our teenagers say that they are online almost constantly. A third say they're on a social media site almost constantly. The phone's always in their hand. They're always scrolling, even in class, even at dinner. And the biggest one is TikTok. So all of these people have largely taken themselves out of life. It'll be hard for them to get married, get a job, have children. They're just doing this. Their brain is changed. So I'm really saddened that the TikTok ban is not likely to hold. We had a hope for, and actually, although of course, if Project Liberty is able to, there is some hope. I'm sorry, there is some hope. There is some hope. Yeah. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, that couldn't have set you up better, Tomicah. Tell us. Obviously, this is part of your vision for the future is a different TikTok in America, at least.
Let me lay out two different components that I think are important elements of what needs to change. If you look at virtually all of the great moral traditions, they have one thing in common, which is that which makes us human is our ability to make decisions. Our free will, our free agency is foundational to what makes us a human being. And we are at a moment where that is in jeopardy. Jack Dorsey gave a very interesting speech in Oslo last June. And he said, we've been very focused on the loss of free speech. We haven't focused nearly enough on the loss of free will. And there's a real danger right now that we are going to lose the agency that makes us human if these technologies continue on their current trajectory. There is a way around that, though, and that's part of our vision for what we hope will be the future of TikTok. Right now, not just TikTok, but most of these platforms are run on an attention economy. And in an attention economy, the goal is to make content as sticky as possible if you're being diplomatic, as addictive as possible if you're being a little bit more blunt, and then monetizing the attention that you're able to capture through advertising and a variety of other mechanisms. It's a pretty effective system in many respects, so let's give folks credit. It's been very, very economically valuable to identify the potential outputs that you can generate from an attention-based economy. But it has all of these big liabilities associated with it. And so ultimately, we believe the answer is to move from an attention-based economy to an intention-based economy. And in an intention-based economy, people are able to proactively and consciously identify the type of content, experiences, goods, and services with which they would like to interact, and then they can curate their own feeds and their own algorithms on the basis of those expressed intentions. And two really interesting things happen when you pivot in this direction. There's a lot of good data that's starting to emerge to back this up. The first is people have a much better experience. So John was highlighting some of the statistics that have emerged around sentiment toward these platforms. One that struck me recently from one of your surveys of Gen Z was that 47% of Gen Z wish this tech had never been invented, which is a real liability, not just from a societal standpoint, but from a value creation standpoint. That's not a good dynamic to have persist. And when you move away from this attention-based model that we're stuck with right now to a model that puts people back in charge, folks have a much better experience on these platforms. They get more value from the time that they are spending on these platforms, and they're able to use that time to build skills, to build knowledge, to build relationships in a way that is going to be much better aligned with their ultimate aspirations as human beings. So that's piece number one. The second piece, remarkably, is that the value of these platforms increases significantly. Because at the moment, most of them are running on what's called inference-based advertising, where they try to figure out what you are interested in based on a variety of different data sources that ultimately come down to guessing what's in your head. It's much more valuable if people will just say, I'm interested in buying a new car. I'd like information on buying a new car. I'm interested in taking a trip. and I'd like information on potential destinations that I can visit when I go on my trip. That's actually really, really useful for everyone. It's useful for individuals who are using the platform, and it's much more useful for those who are trying to connect with them in a market sense. So we can create better incentives for fixing this. That's pivot number one. Second one, very quickly, the power of open societies historically has resided in their ability to generate the templates that everyone else wants to emulate. And that has been core to the success of the United States, certainly. It's been core to the success of virtually every other free society. Right now, to the very good points that John and Tristan made a moment ago, we have a really bad template. We are exporting technology that is bad for everyone. Yep. And we need a better template. We need a model that we're going to be proud of and that we want our kids to grow up with and that they're going to be able to derive real value from and build happy lives on. And we also want others to look to the template that we are generating and say, I want that. And we don't have that at the moment. So I think there is an opportunity to solve both of those problems, but it's going to require significant change, like potentially a new direction for the US assets of TikTok.
Right. Margarita, quickly, what you're working on, what your vision is.
I think that everything what we heard from technical point of view is very important and needed to be done. At the same time, we have not to forget about our natural psychological weakness. We like sweet things. We like short things. Even if we will keep our data, and even if we will, still we are weak there. Still we will find other companies in the future who will sell us psychological solutions, the psychological friends, and we will choose them because they are so nice and they're so sweet. This is why I think this thing we should look not only as a business regulator, political, but it is also medical issue. Like sugar diabetes is a medical issue, so diabetes of the brain, what they are getting from this, we have to be in mind of this and to speak about it loudly and to push also society to look at it from this point of view, that we are just we have prediction from this.
A little bit about education, isn't it?
It is about education, yes. And now I just want to say about tech industry, when we are speaking about technological solutions, for everything, not only this, but for every new gadget, everything new, what will be invented, we have to make a additional analysis. What does it make? What impact it makes on our skills? For adults, it surely makes, but of course, first time on children, because we adults, at least if we were grow up not in digital childhood, we have already our skills, like we have our strengths to say no to the sugar without limit. So it is our free choice. But children, what skills will they lose? This should be made transparently by any new educational digital education or just anything digital what we will have in our lives. And the last thing what I would say, for us parents who have children today, the regulation could be too late. We don't know how many years it will take. And our children, they live today, they have no time. This is why, again, I think every parent has to understand that the main thing is now on him, on us parents. It's a very big job, but we know what is on stake. We cannot wait until politicians will find solutions.
Great. I want to come back to you, Tomicah, first, because what you're, you originally, though a great panelist, you were going to be represented by your founder, Frank McCourt, who's had to go back to Washington to try and negotiate to buy TikTok in America. Where are we with that? I know you may not be able to disclose everything, but is that possible even with these feudal barons now surrounding Trump? Are they going to let you steal away this prize?
Well, I'll say two things. The first is we have submitted a formal offer to ByteDance for the U.S. assets of TikTok. As part of that, we have committed that we will not disclose the particulars of that offer so that we can create space for negotiation. So I'm not going to get into the details in conjunction with that. I will say at a much broader level, we think that there is a real opportunity to move things in the right direction. What we have seen over the last year is the passage of legislation in the United States that is very, very clear about the requirements for any qualified divestiture of that asset. And there are a few extremely crisp components that must be part of any solution if TikTok is going to remain operational in the United States. It will have to be moved onto a clean tech stack that does not link back to the existing tech stack. The only reason that Project Liberty is in a position to pursue this bid is we have been building a clean tech stack for the last 5 years. We have lots of people already using that tech stack. We know it works. And so we check that box very nicely. The second component is that you can't be, for a variety of reasons, an antitrust risk. So many of the big tech companies in the United States have tech stacks available. Virtually all of them would constitute significant antitrust risks. And in the US, this is very important, states' attorneys general have massive power when it comes to antitrust enforcement. So it's not just that you need a Department of Justice at the federal level that's going to let you complete a transaction. You need states to go along with it as well. And those states, as you would imagine, have a wide array. Between the 50 states and the District of Columbia, you have 51 potential blockers for any transaction. And they're going to have to be on board with the idea that there isn't an antitrust risk. The third is you will need a US-based capital stack. We have a committee in the United States called CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the US. They're going to be looking very closely at the composition of capital that's party to any deal. We have built a US-based capital stack for this transaction. And then finally, you need to be comfortable doing all of this without the algorithm. This is not a US requirement, but Chinese law states very clearly that they will not allow export of the algorithm. We respect that. We understand the reasons for that. And so our plan does not require utilization of the Chinese algorithm. Project Liberty's bid for TikTok is not only to the best of our knowledge, but to the best knowledge of the lawmakers who have put forward this legislation and many other policymakers who have been deeply involved in this, the only solution that satisfies these requirements that would allow TikTok to stay lit. We want the platform to stay lit. We think there is incredible dynamism and creativity that resides within TikTok. We think that there is a moment right now to preserve that and move it in a better direction.
And President Trump hasn't dismissed this out of hand.
We have been briefing President Trump regularly. Kevin O'Leary, who's part of our bid, has been down at Mar-a-Lago with President Trump every few days in the run-up to the inauguration. Frank and Kevin are in D.C. now, and he's fully apprised of the plan. And again, we think there is a real path forward here that will satisfy the needs of all sides and allow for a good solution.
And Jonathan, I want to come to you. I mean, firstly, I wanted to ask you about this shift from an attention economy to an intention economy. Does that make sense to you? Or?
Well, first, I just want to say, isn't this amazingly cool that we get this report of like what's going on right now? So, I mean, the organizations here, Human Change and CHT and Project Liberty are just amazing, and so I'm just very pleased to be part of all this. I think I'm beginning to read some of the great writers on technology from the 20th century, especially Neil Postman and others, and they thought a lot about technology as a tool, and whenever there's a tool, it changes. It's as though it changes our body, and our brains now think about the world in a different way. And McLuhan said every new technology is a prosthesis. It's an extension, but it's also an amputation. We lose something. These are the sorts of things that Margarita was talking about. And so I think we keep in mind the idea that technology should be a tool, never a master, is one. And so I'm very fortunate that I'm, in terms of phone, in that I'm kind of a workaholic, so I'm always on my computer. And so my phone is just a tool for me. I'm not on social media. I get very few notifications. So for me, I love my iPhone. It's just a tool. Now, talk to my wife about my computer. That's another story. But what we see for kids over and over again is they are mesmerized by the screen from the age of a few months, mesmerized. And they're not using it as a tool. It is using them to extract these trillions of dollars of value.
We just have to say none.
Exactly.
At all. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Now-
Just one point that I want to emphasize. It's not that you have to keep your kids away from all screens, because stories are good things. Humans live in stories. We invent stories. We've always told stories. So if you want to watch a movie with your kid on a television, that's great. There's no problem with that. It's the technologies that now are taking over our kids, and they're not using it as a tool. That's what we have to watch out for. And that I think is the intention economy, if we can get it right.
Now, as someone that's followed movements and been part of movements, it strikes me that you are so manifestly right with your proposals on this, and it's such a clear proposition, schools, no phones, that this ought to be a thing that we could see change almost overnight, like tobacco happened in the culture shift there. I mean, do you see that happening? What's the main obstacle to that, if there is one?
I've never seen anything like this. I'm sorry, there's one example. The change is happening so fast. I never dreamed it would happen this fast. Just in the last week, Brazil announced that they're going to go phone-free. Indonesia announced that they're going to try to raise the age. I haven't said to what. So this is happening like nothing ever before, except the fall of the Iron Curtain. And I think the reason why communism fell so quickly before the internet, things couldn't spread. I mean, the internet speeds everything up. But the reason why it fell so quickly, I believe, in 1987, I traveled across the East Bloc and I talked to people, and I found out everyone hates it. Everyone hates communism. They just think like, well, what can I do if I stand up? I'll be imprisoned or killed. But then when they first knocked down the wall in Berlin, and people are just, wait, you mean we're not going to get killed? And then boom, it goes everywhere because everyone hated it. And that's what's happening now. And I think what I've seen is there is an international army of moms arising around the world who were like, enough is enough, you're taking my child, stop. And so what they needed was just coordinate. It needed to become common knowledge. Like,
Is
why
Zaf is talking about more masculine energy, I guess, is it?
That's right. That's right. But even when you look at the legislation, it's often initiated either by women or by the wives of the politician. Mothers really felt it, and we see and you see the passion Margarita has for when she sees what it does to her kids. So that's why change is happening on this faster than anything I could ever imagine.
Now, I want to quickly talk to you, Tristan, and then you'll open it up for questions. Two things. One is, regarding the general incentives and ecosystem in which this is all playing out. Antitrust obviously has been cranked up a bit in America. Also, there's been quite strong antitrust action in Europe that Elon and others seem to be already trying to target and undermine. Can antitrust, how important is that as part of the solution, that the platforms getting away from free, all that kind of thing?
Well, first, I want to just take a moment and really applaud the work that John has done with his book. I've also been working on these issues for many years prior, and I've never seen as much change happen as since John put his book out in creating this just wave of unlocking. I think of it like the fall of the Silicon Curtain is what it feels like to me.
So good with metaphors.
Because it's just like you said, though. There's this thing that's obvious. It's just obvious. We're just living in this obviously wrong reality. It has to change. People are just looking for a way to do it. And I think that the simple prescriptions of giving people agency before the government takes action is just so important. So I just wanted to first say that. It's really been an enormous contribution. And then on antitrust, I think concentration of power is one issue, but again, you're left with the attention economy. You break up Facebook into Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp. Now there are 3 separate companies with 3 P&Ls and revenue sheets that they have to increase their revenue, so that competition gets more fierce. Look what happened with AI. I don't know if you know the history of this, but Anthropic, the founders of Anthropic were, which is one of the biggest leading AI companies in the world, were at OpenAI. They said, OpenAI is not doing this in a safe way. We need to change all that, so we're going to start a new company called Anthropic to do it the safe way. What that did, and Ilya, by the way, was the other co-founder of OpenAI, And he left, said, they're not doing it in a safe way, so I'm going to start my own safe superintelligence company. Now there's 3 superintelligence companies, and the competition between them has made safety worse for everybody because it's the race to take shortcuts. So the race to the bottom of the brainstem will get more intense with the more competition that there is. And I think that this is an example of the kind of philosophical crisis that we're in. That the go-to solutions that we have reached for in the 20th century, which are rightly pointing out in the spirit of the law that concentration of power is a big deal and it's a problem. And I would think it would be a very bad thing if Musk were to get both TikTok and X and have that's a very big deal. I just think we have to get very clear in diagnosing what's driving which issues.
You mentioned China and this contest with China. What do you think the Silicon Valley overlords' vision of what they're trying to do, given the obvious against China? What's their model for beating China? Given how it's already had these horrendous effects. Yeah. What do you?
I don't think that they're motivated by beating China. I think that they're motivated by. I think they use the rhetoric of don't regulate us because they tell the U.S. government we're your biggest asset to beat China, but that's not what they care about. Because Microsoft, a bunch of their businesses in China. They just care about what they have to care about by corporate law, which is maximizing shareholder value for them. I'm not saying that because I think any of these people are bad people. It's that they're operating under their set of incentives, which is why incentives really do control the outcome. If you want a different outcome, have them not be just maximizing shareholder value. Have them say, we have to make sure we are protecting and reinventing what open societies are so that there's a template for what open societies in the 21st century look like. And I wasn't here earlier, but I believe Audrey Tang, the former digital minister of Taiwan, is right over there. And she is a living legend and hero because she is pointing at a possibility for a template of a digital democratic society, an open society, in which AI actually makes that open society run even better. And social media can find unlikely consensus and common ground rather than being a perfect division fault line finding machine to amplify the fault lines in our culture wars in every society around the world. So I just want to say, I think people should, if you're looking for optimism and hope and think about how do we solve these problems, listen to a podcast episode that I did with Audrey. We've done a couple of them, and her work deserves to be followed.
Everyone should follow Your Undivided Attention. It's the best podcast in this space.
Brilliant. So I would love to hog the floor and have more questions, but I want to give people in the audience a chance to have their say. So a lady there in the middle, and if you say who you are and if you have any affiliation.
Yeah. I'm Gaia Bernstein. I'm professor of law at Seton Hall Law School. And I have a question for Tristan. You were talking about the character AI lawsuits, about the engagement business model. So we're used to the advertising engagement business model. I don't know if the information is out yet because the motions were just filed, but it doesn't seem to me like it's an advertising business model. Is it something different? Is it about getting more training data from the kids? Is it about eventually charging money for subscriptions? What's going on?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question. And since you worked on some of the litigation with Mitali Jain, did you not? Yes. So Mitali Jain at the Tech Justice Law Project, along with the Social Media Victims Law Center, just want to give credit where credit's due. There was a big collaboration on this character.ai lawsuit to try to get this litigation underway. So your question is it the same as the advertising business model that drove social media? Because there's no advertising yet in the character.ai AI companions. So how do we compare these business models? To your point, they're still maximizing for engagement because usage and engagement is a proxy for how valuable or how popular something is on the first level. Second level is what you said, which is training data. I don't know how many people here know this, but character.ai was spun out of Google. It was considered too high risk to do within Google, so it's better to have these people who worked on the original technology behind large language models called transformers. They left, they created character.ai, they raised a bunch of money, they could do more high-risk things that are off-brand for what Google could do. Not because anyone's evil, Google, it's just how the incentives work. And they are doing this engagement thing because the more they get kids talking to it for hours and hours a day, to your point, the more training data they get to train an even better AI model that's even better at relating to kids the next time. And so it's really a training data absorption machine by which engagement is the best proxy for that. For those who don't know, there's been multiple sort of litigation waves of this. There's a second case, unfortunately, that our team also helped on, in which the AI encourages the kid to cut themselves and then gives them interactive instructions about how to do that, and then tells when the parents, when they complain about how their parents are saying, I'm using it too much, it tells them to be violent against their parents. And the kid was actually violent against their parents. And this is not a single one-off case. I can tell you there's a wave of these things coming. And again, from our perspective, who've been staring at this for more than a decade, it's like, how much more information do we need? We don't need an NIH study. We don't need more data. It is clear what has to change. We just have to be willing to move it. And I also want to call out the work of Julie Scelfo, who I saw earlier, in Moms Against Media Addiction, because if you're a parent, you can join a real group and say, hey, I want to demand change in my state, or I want to show up and lobby the Facebook campus in New York. I think that this can be changed, but we just need to be really clear on what the problems are.
Okay, another question? Right at the front here, and then the man in the middle. No, we'll start there. You go first, and then we'll bring it to the front.
Well,
Say who you
I also
are.
have a question for Tristan. My name is Danny Wolf. I'm from Germany. Do you see any hopeful attempts of using AI to protect children against the coming perils of AI? For the kids I work with, they're not using character AI anymore. They use poly AI now because it's even uncensored and even worse.
Yeah.
So how do we? Is there any promising attempt you see in your field?
So first, I just want to say, I don't want to vilify AI. The AI is not just this boogeyman that just makes everything bad. AI times bad incentives and an open, unregulated environment where we're not trying to protect or do age-appropriate design. That is bad. I know that there is a large ecosystem of people who are trying to use AI to, identify child sexual abuse material, or, build education tutors that don't anthropomorphize and try to create an attachment relationship. I couldn't give you the full map, or that many projects that I know about there. I will say, to your point, one of the challenges for parents is that they knew to be concerned about social media and the 4 or 5 apps that they've heard of, but they don't know about the next wave of hundreds of new apps, notification apps, new chatbots that people haven't heard of. There's a gold rush right now to ship this stuff, and parents, you can't put it on the parents' back to be responsible for knowing about it all.
Could I add something? Yesterday I had a conversation. One family, Indian family, came to me with 2 children, 2 daughters, one around 11, another around 11, 6 years old. And these daughters were so happy and so proud that they are now working and promoting chatbots for children who have, parents have no time to answer all the questions. And these children, 2 of them were looking at me very professionally, very convinced, and said, we have so many friends, their parents are so busy, they cannot answer this. So we are now creating this with the help of AI to help our friends to answer all these questions. And we are trying that it will be very safe and all this. And I looked at them, you see, it is not anymore even parents. The children soon will create their own toys and will promote them like as a health measures for well-being of children. So we have also to think about this.
Yeah, the gentleman there, and then pass the mic forward to the lady in front. Yeah, I'll take both questions.
Hello, my name is Michael. I founded a company together with my son to solve the global problem of loneliness. And the question I have to the panelists is how we can support you to make your life a better place.
Brilliant. If you pass the mic to the lady at the front. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, my name is Karen. I come from Colombia, from Cartagena. I'm currently reading your book in Spanish, La Generación Ansiosa, which I love it. And then I found you here, so that's... So I think I wanted to ask all of you if you have any information about Latin America and how the context is going over there. I feel like Latin America is a bit behind, compared to the United States or Canada or United Kingdom. So I feel like there's stuff that we can still do there to prevent the point where it's gotten in the States. Over there, not every kid has a phone. We're still not yet there. We are still fighting against all these gaps of accessibility on computers and internet and whatnot. So I wanted to ask you any thoughts on LATAM, because in your book I didn't see as much as that kind of content. My sisters and I own a school in Colombia, in Cartagena, And everything you mentioned in the book, I'm like, oh yeah, I see it. But it's not the reality for all of the country. We still have to deal there with other stuff. Kids cannot just go outside and play. You know, it's a different context in so many ways. So I wanted to ask you if you have any insights on the region.
I'll take it because I do have some. So if you go to anxiousgeneration.com/reviews, that's the website for the book and for the movement that we're building. And we have documents about what's going on in Europe, what's going on in the UK. We're building one for Latin America. We don't have good longitudinal data sets, but there's a number of studies that have been done. And the general thing that I can tell you is that from studying positive psychology many years ago, Latin America is the part of the world that is happier than its wealth would predict, and Japan is the part that's less happy than its wealth would predict, because in Latin America you're more sociable, you're more oriented towards people, and that turns out to be protective after 2012. That is, we have so many graphs of who became anxious and depressed and self-harming after 2012, and basically kids who were in communities that were bound in, constrained, real communities of adults, religion, obligations, they only go up a little. Secular kids who had a lot of freedom, non-religious households, they go up a lot. So I would think more mental health, right? Those hockey stick graphs of
the bad things.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's right. Yeah, mental health. Right, I should say mental illness. So I would expect Latin America would and variably have protection. Now, as you said, part of the story in the book is the other half is we've been overprotecting them in the real world. We have to let them out. But of course, in some parts of Latin America, you have kidnapping, you have violence, in some, so things are different. But there is evidence. Danny Blanchflower, an economist at Dartmouth, just sent me a paper a couple weeks ago. It looks as though Latin America is the same as the rest of the world, in that there used to be a U-shaped curve of happiness where the happiest people are actually old people in their 60s and 70s. And the second happiest people are young people in their 20s. That's always been true for decades and decades around the world until 2015. All over the world, the graphs have shifted. So this U-shaped curve of happiness, the young people are going down and down. They're now the least happy. And that's happening in Latin America. It's happening everywhere.
I just would like to add that our company has most of the business is Latin America. And I'm not only speaking with our employees about these issues, but also generally. And I can tell you, unfortunately, also Latin America is going this direction. Slower than Europe, but all the signs are there. So you have to, maybe you have a little more time now to react, but it's the same dangers. Maybe we can answer the question before. How can we be supported? Maybe.
Yeah. Right. So there are two ways that you can help with ideas and with money. And so money is the simpler one. I know Center for Humane Technology is a fairly small operation. It should be huge. It is the premier organization on many of the aspects of understanding what's going on. Project Liberty is the other one, but I'm not going to fundraise for Project Liberty.
We'll take it.
Yeah. and then I'm building a movement. So at anxiousgeneration.com, I'm hiring staff, and so we could certainly use your financial support. The other way is with ideas for collaboration. So I had a great talk with Michael yesterday and his son, because the fourth norm, let's get the kids out, that's the hardest one. We're not making much progress on that. Parents are afraid. And so Michael has this great app called Scover, which allows you to find the kids in your area where the families are interested in getting together. Do you like bowling? Do you like tennis? Do you want to bicycle? Get kids together. And the really important idea, it's so obvious, is any platform that's going to help here has to have know your customer laws. That is, you don't allow people to just sign. You have to be very well verified, very age verified, so you don't have sex criminals from around the world talking to your daughter. So so contribute, ideas. If you have ideas, if you have a project that you think relates to our work.
So is that another rule that there should be real identity and real age limits?
I'm basically saying we need to delay, keep kids off of social media as much as possible. To the extent that they ever get on, it has to be in a space which is age identified. I mean, otherwise the sex predators are everywhere. Anywhere kids go, they're sex predators.
Micah, you wanted to jump in first.
Just quickly on how you can help, and John was touching on this a little bit. Both the founder of DSNP, Braxton, and I grew up in mountains. And if you go onto the frontier in the U.S., you will hear stories of what are called quilting parties. And for our European friends, quilting parties occurred because large pieces of cloth on the frontier were really expensive and hard to come by. And so if you wanted to make it through the winter, you would pull all your friends and neighbors together. Everyone would bring a little square of cloth, and you'd stitch those pieces of cloth together into something that would get you through the winter. We face a similar challenge as we settle this new digital frontier. the pieces of cloth that will be required, the pieces of digital code that will be required to solve these challenges, and the best practices that will be required to protect our kids, those are hard to come by, and in many cases they're going to be very expensive. So we're going to have to come together and stitch together all of these solutions into something that's going to help us do that. We have built technology at Project Liberty, including a decentralized digital infrastructure layer called Frequency that solves for some of the identity challenges that John was just speaking about. Many others have built amazing tech. Bring those ideas, bring the resources that you have available, and let's work together to create something that's going to get us through the digital winter that we're experiencing right now.
Okay, I would just like to add that everything what we are speaking here, everything what you can read on our websites, it's such an amazing, powerful information. And if you could start to share it with everybody, with your neighbors, inside of your family, and also use your job. I think we are already at the point of such distress that we have to put aside our fears also in the company, maybe to look strange or to look politically incorrect, or I don't know how, but we have to open our mouths and start to speak. Also inside of everywhere we are working, inside of the schools, with all the parents in the school, just share this information as much as possible and ask everybody to do the same. I think this is possible for everybody. Not everybody is possible maybe to put some money or to do some more complicated things, but to sharing at least this information. This is what I am asking everybody around me.
Right. We have one last question just here. Well, maybe the lady next to you as well. Yep.
So hi, Jan Artem Henriksen. I'm the founder of Inner Development Goals Initiative. So a perspective that I would like to all of you panelists, I mean, we're in the space in between. We see the huge challenges. How can we protect us also from a human individual perspective? Is there transformational learning, skills? Can we build critical thinking, awareness, to not get stuck, and not just for the kids, but also for the adults, because we have 10 years ahead of us.
Okay. Pass the mic next to you.
It's not really a question, it's more a comment. First of all, thank you for the mothers. I'm the president of the Smartphone Free Childhood Switzerland movement. And it's amazing that people are standing together, but what I really want to say also is more of a comment, is that we have to be inconvenient about this. A phone is very convenient. You can hand a phone to anybody. This is not only applicable to children, but also to adults. It's like sugar. It's the same thing. You just sit on the sofa and you do it without knowing. Same thing with a phone. You have to stand up and just say no. And this means maybe fighting with your children or with your partner or with the schools. But I think it's standing up and just making a point.
Great. So do you want to take that last bit?
Very briefly, what can we do as adults? So when I was almost done with the book, and it was all about kids, and I realized I haven't said anything about adults, but we're all feeling it. We're all feeling overwhelmed and fragmented. And so I decided to write a chapter on spiritual elevation and degradation. And I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God, but I've been studying spirituality and awe and religion for a long time. And I realized so much of ancient wisdom is about how do you live in a confusing world full of people who are duplicitous. And you read Marcus Aurelius, yes, we can see ourselves in Marcus Aurelius's life. And they developed techniques: Stoicism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, meditative practices. So chapter 8 of The Anxious Generation is about 6 ways that our phone-based lives are spiritually degrading. And again, you don't have to believe in God to understand this. Raise your hand if you find, overall, you find that your electronic life is morally elevating, spiritually elevating. Raise your hand if that's you. Okay? Nobody. Raise your hand if you recognize what I'm saying about spiritual degradation. You feel degraded, brought down. Okay, so we all see it, we all feel it, and I actually believe, look to ancient wisdom. I have a book called The Happiness Hypothesis that's about ancient wisdom.
Great, so we're pretty much...
Can I add something to this? This is very important what you say. This is what we all feel. There's a practical way. Again, check everything what we are doing and what skills we are losing. It's not so complicated in reality, especially about children. And if the tech industry doesn't do it, but we should start to do it by ourselves with our teachers. Let's make a list what they are losing by choosing a digital way of life.
Great. Well, I don't really want to bring this conversation to an end, but we're pretty much out of time. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists just to give one final thought to all of you as to I guess, what we can do over the next 12 months in particular. And if you want to add a bit more to that, because you've got something to say on this question.
Well, I was just going to recommend, so Jan's work, the inner development goals, think about, the sustainable development goals are for the outer world. How do we solve the major world challenges? The inner development goals are about how do we have inner developmental progress. And I sort of feel called to sort of channeling Martin Luther King Day yesterday, that I definitely have a dream where technology can be humane and developmental to how human societies work. The point of meeting children where they're at, the point of meeting adults where they're at, is to have a developmental view of how people grow, how they grow morally, how they grow spiritually, how they grow relationally. And if technology is sort of the brain implant that was going to be on our psyche 24/7, it can't not be developmental. It has to be contributing to this positive developmental long-term vision. And I think that with everything we've discussed today, hopefully we've shown you that there is a path from where we are now to that better future. I'm not saying it's easy. It's against trillion-dollar incentives that are plowing away the other direction. None of us are naive to that. But I think
what do you want to see more than anything happen in the next year?
I want to see John's work and this movement of parents take off and completely reverse the trends in schools, and a bipartisan consensus in Congress, because the kids' issues are completely bipartisan, creating a wedge to then deal with all the other tech issues, including AI. And I think that that's possible.
Jonathan.
So when Alexis de Tocqueville traveled around the United States in the 1830s, he wrote a book called Democracy in America, in which he observed that when there's a problem, a bridge is out, a school needs to be built, in Europe, they wait for the king or the nobles to do it. In America, they don't look to government, they form a committee, they've got a group, Ben Franklin, raise money, then they get it done. And he thought this was a very admirable trait about Americans. Now, I think we're maybe a little less like that than we were then, but our government is also quite dysfunctional at the federal level, not the state level so much. And so what I would like to see more of is a recognition around the world that yes, government is essential. We do need government to raise the age. There's all kinds of things that we need government for. Government will never be able to keep up with the pace of change, which means that it's absolutely essential that we do the sort of the Tocqueville, frontier America thing of let's assume we get no help from government ever. What are we going to do? And that and if you work on your own, there's not a lot you can do. But if you work together, we are incredibly powerful, and we can change norms. We can change markets. We can change the incentives that these companies are operating under to stop making products that are really hurting our kids.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Hannah Arendt's work, she stresses that the more light touch and small the state is, the more you need to invest in social capital and those social institutions. So we may need to remember that a lot in the next 4 years. Tomicah, what do you want to see in the next year?
If you're in this room, by definition, you've got a lot of leverage. You have the ability to impact communities, your own family certainly, but in many cases, large organizations that serve as the fulcrums for decision making within our society. And we need to start very deliberately asking in every interaction we are having with technology, in every interaction that we are having with policymakers, in every interaction that we're having with our loved ones, are we making digital decisions that are going to result in a world where people have more of a choice in how their information is used, more of a voice in the way digital platforms operate, and more of a stake in the economic value that they are generating online? And if the answer to those questions isn't yes, then we need to do things differently, and we need to go back to the drawing board. We can get this right. This is a solvable problem. Ultimately, this is an engineering problem. So if there's one thing that you leave with today, I hope it is an appreciation that this is fixable. This is really, really fixable, and it's fixable, to John's point a moment ago, in the relatively near term. But it's only going to be fixable if people in this room and people in the other rooms that are coming together here this week start to make the decisions that we've spoken about.
So, I would like, maybe my wish thinking is, the name Human Change I gave to our platform because I was thinking about climate change. Climate change, I don't speak what it is per se, but I just say that some people did some predictions. And suddenly our society became so afraid of these predictions that we started to react. And every big company and every forum has a big thing, climate change. So my dream would be that the human change would become the same topic in every company, everybody, and then we have to say every our decision, how does it impact, makes impact on our human change. And in order to achieve this, we have to start with predictions. Who are the humans of tomorrow? Not in 100 years. Let's speak about 15 years. Are they people? Can they support democracy? What skills are needed for democracy? Are they going to have these skills? Somebody has to do predictions. So many predictions we have about climate change, but no one prediction we have about human change. What does it mean for our society? I think when we will have predictions, then we will get inside of society enough force, like for climate change, to do amazing things. We need predictions. I hope that during the next 12 months, somebody will do it.
Well, I came here to Davos hoping that I'd find something optimistic to take away with me, and I do feel that there really is no reason why every school in the world shouldn't be phone free in a year's time when we meet again. So for that idea alone, and why don't we embrace that and get it done? I mean, if anywhere can get it done, it's the people who are here, and let's set ourselves that goal. I'd like to thank this panel really for giving us such amazing insight and leadership, and setting us a challenge and a reason for hope. So thank you very much.